You are Locked On Coogs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Parker Ainsworth, Locked On Coogs here, breaking down Houston Cougars in the portal. And frankly, looking at guys that could be potentially Houston Cougars that are in the portal, I should say, as we move into a segment looking at potential guys. And these guys that either have visited or will visit or have been linked to visits. And I want to stress as we enter the weekend this weekend, you could very well see a dozen commitments by Sunday. You might see more than that. There are a lot of kids coming. It's easy to get to Houston, a couple big airports, very drivable from a large region of very rich football playing soil. Bluntly, it's finals week and those kinds of things for these college kids at campuses. So if they're online or if they're doing papers or if they're already done with their tests, they might be home. They might be willing to travel. They might have the time to do it. And frankly, if they're looking to transfer, their grade might be able to withstand being absent for a final anyway. That's neither here nor there. What is here and there is there are a lot of people on campus this weekend, and the week after, all touring campus looking to be in this transfer class Houston's creating, right? I want to start with the guy that's been linked to Houston the most that has not signed yet. And I say that because he could sign very, very quickly. He was on his second visit of the week, but his first visit was Houston. Yes, that is Cam Dewberry. Cam with a K, 6'4", 330 pounds. I got to watch a little bit more stuff on him online. And at 6'4", 330, he could kind of play tackle or guard or center. So I watched him kind of with that eye, like what could he play if he came to Houston? And he run blocks like a downhill guard. I mean, he can really get after in the running game. Kind of like we talked about that two-lane connection, building that offense. That's a power four version of what we saw Nagel and them do, right? Definitely guarding the pass protection game. I don't know that one on an island out in space and all that kind of stuff. But Cam Dewberry, the Texas A&M product, is the kind of guy that will make a like real run at. I mean, right now he would start on this team. He would have started over anybody on last year's team at guard. I wonder what it will look like this fall, depending on how many guys you bring in and who gets the starting spot or whatever. But would be an immediate upgrade at an interior offensive line spot right away. The other big guy, these guys are just getting bigger. Who done the list? So work with me here. Is Alvin Ebosele. Baylor transfers, got a visit scheduled with Houston. I believe it's this weekend, but it might be early next week. Don't quote me on that. He's 6'6", 315, and a similar kind of guy, right? He can play tackle or guard. He's much more pass blocking suited to playing guard. And you know, if we're being honest about it, had times where he got beat in pass pro at Baylor. Now, he can run block with the best of them, gets under pads, and gets that 6'6" frame really, really coiled up, which is frankly, we'll just to say simply impressive. But I have to say that he's the kind of guy that he's just a big, strong, and he plays really mean. I'm sure he's a nice kid. He plays really mean kind of athlete. And you play football, man. You can't keep those kids off the team. You got to find a few, right? And so I'm excited about Alvin Ebosele too. I don't know if Cam Dewberry, Alvin Ebosele both come or not. We'll see how those kind of things go. But I don't think that they work against each other. And frankly, I feel like even though you brought in a couple of interior offensive linemen, even though you're returning Pancake Hunter, who was probably your best offensive lineman a year ago, and that's another interior kind of guy. If you're going to build the Nagel type of offense that they ran and were successful with in his year as the OC at Tulane, and he had a big factor and was a big factor in calling plays the year before. But both of those years, they were very much a gap run scheme kind of team. And mind you, Gavi is familiar with it too. So you got to imagine it's kind of the thing that they're going to go with. These run grading type guys are really, really important. Now, the biggest of the big at 6'9", 310 pounds is offensive tackle and transfer portal from Texas Tech, Dalton Merriman. Now, he is probably the rawest product out of all these guys. Probably needs the most work. Obviously, playing offensive tackle is the most challenging of the 5 spots, left tackle specifically of the 5 spots, because the quarterback's blindside, you can't really make mistakes. And for what it's worth, you're typically dealing with really impressive athletes at the opposing defensive end. But he's really, really got some natural movement to him that at 6'9", 310, I don't know that I would have just assumed he could do, right? I think you got to take a chance on the guy, bring him in, sign him, commit him, and kind of help develop. And he might have to play right away next year. We will see, but he's the kind of guy that I think in a big picture perspective, you want on your roster because you want to build him. I mean, again, a gigantic type of offensive tackle that you want to build into somebody that you can turn into a pro, right? I mean, he's got the kind of frame that screams, "Please work with me," right? And so, and he's shown that he's aggressive. He's shown that he can get after it. I have here that he started, what is that, 8 games at Texas Tech last year, and they weren't bad, right? They had some big time upsets there in Lubbock. I mean, productive offense the entire year. Dalton Merriman's an important factor in this. I looked at a couple other skinny guys as well that have been linked to Houston. Tanner Geisel is a 6'7" tight end, and if you were doing like Pro Football Focus grades or whatever as far as your ranking system goes, of these guys I'm listing, he'd probably be the highest. He's a really, really talented tight end. Again, 6'7", he's 240 pounds, and he had 18 touchdown passes, or he caught 18 touchdown passes at Ball State. He uses his frame really, really well. He's got a lot of frame to use. He uses his frame really, really well. He's a pretty solid blocker too, though, at 6'7", 240, and I wonder if he can get to 250 by the time he gets to Houston. I think he's a guy that, not unlike Michael Batten a year ago, not unlike AJ Halls the year before that, a kind of guy that would come in from a smaller program and the nation might be like, whatever. And then he shows up and like, oh, this guy can go, right? He's got that kind of a vibe to his tape. Sticks out, not just he's a giant on a smaller football field or like football field with smaller players. He's a giant, but he sticks out because he's really, really talented on that video. Receivers, Terrence Carter and Amari Thomas, both could come in and make an impact right away. Amari Thomas is a UAB guy, had almost 700 yards last year, 8 touchdowns. I think when I look at Amari Thomas, I think of like some wiggliness that you're going to use a lot between the 25s, and I don't know. I think that ultimately, I think that he's the kind of guy that would come in and probably do a lot of your slot kind of stuff. Now, Muse and Boogie Johnson are both returning. I'd heard that Amari Thomas was tied to Houston. I don't think that Boog and Mackay coming back means that you can't bring in Amari Thomas. I wonder if that will impact his decision, though. And the other guy I'm calling a wide receiver, other people are not, is tight end by the name of Terrence Carter, coming from Louisiana. He's the kind of guy at 6'2", 230. He is a true tight end. I don't mean to say that he's not a true tight end, but he is much more of a pass catching type. He had nearly 700 yards as a tight end last year, 4 touchdowns on the season. His name's been tied to Houston as well. I don't know that Houston gets both Keisel and Carter. And Carter feels more receiver-ish to me, so we might actually kind of get a view on what Slade Nagel wants to do with this offense based on which one he gets. I would imagine it's Keisel, but I also know that he's probably not the only coach in America that wants Keisel on the team. So we'll see how that goes. But again, this is all just guys being linked to Houston. There could legitimately be more than a dozen guys committed by Sunday afternoon, evening, because of how many guys they're bringing in for visits right now. The kids got some free time. You're not quite to bowl games, and it's early in the window. You want to nab them early before someone else can get them, etc. Shoot, that's part of me that anticipates one of these guys signing legitimately before this episode actually airs, but I can't do anything about that. I got to just push Gotta just push go. I also want to talk about a couple guys that are returning to the University of Houston, one of which I didn't think, actually neither of which I thought would be. But before we get to that, I do got to remind you that today's show is also brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now, you can get in on the NFL action with FanDuel. If you put down $5 and that bet hits, you get $150 back in bonus bets if you win. FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets in the NFL all in one place. If you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check the latest stats, you live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page that you placed your bets. Visit FanDuel.com. You start with $150 back in bonus bets if your first bet hits. That first $5 bet hits. Visit FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.